Hi. Welcome to Jung and Harp. This is episode number 137, The Access Point. I am Kathleen Wiley, a Jungian psychoanalyst in North Carolina, and I am here with Deborah Henson-Conant, a composer, a creative, a mentor in the Boston area, and we both play the harp, and that's why we call this Jung and Harp. Almost every week, we come together to have a conversation. We come with questions, not answers, and we come with questions that we want to explore together and would love to have your input in if you're joining us live by putting in chats on whatever platform you are watching us, if the platform allows that. So, Deborah, do you want
Yeah.
to start?
Yeah. Well,
How
one
we
of the
got
things
to
one of the
access
things I wanted to say is as we were coming onto the screen, it was like for the first time we're streaming live on Instagram, and it was like, do you want to be in a different aspect? And we were like, nah, whatever, let's just go on. But Kathleen, if we both lean in like this, we'll actually be on the screen. Maybe, I don't know. So we were talking this morning about access points, and every week when we get together, we just come up with a subject. What's on our mind right now, and then we look at it through the lens of creativity and music, and also through the lens of psychology and analysis and Carl Jung. And so this week, Kathleen was talking about everything that's falling apart in her house. But
you know,
I was most taken with the fact that your front door is the lock is no longer working, and it broke in the locked position.
mhm.
So the access point, and there's no way to fix the lock. You've explored it all. None of my suggestions worked, of course, because you'd already tried all of them. And you simply have to get a new door. And so we started thinking about access points and what happens when an access point is either not working. So, the door needs to be able to be locked. But then when the door is locked and you can't unlock it, it no longer becomes an access point. And we were realizing that in my show, The Golden Cage, that is exactly what happens. There is a golden cage, which is a beautiful golden cage, and a character is locked inside it. And to her, the cage is made out of cement and iron. There is no access point. Even though this cage is invisible, for her, there is no access point to get out. And she defends that position so that nobody can get in as well. And it becomes a wall. And then this becomes a metaphor for the rest of our lives. And where are our access points? Where have we locked those access points? And then we started talking about what each of us does in terms of coaching. I mean, each of us has different parts of our lives, but we both have online group coaching programs. Mine is Hip Harp Academy, and yours is the online Sacred Circle. I'm probably saying it wrong. And
No, you
each
did
of
it.
them, oh, amazing. And for each of us, it is about creating access for others to their own creative self. That's certainly what it is in Hip Harp Academy. I've been doing it with harpists, but for the first time in January, I'm opening up a class on creative access to non harpists and also non musicians. So this concept of access and how do we create access for others and for ourselves, especially when that has been locked. And I am going to ask you, as a Jungian psychoanalyst, how do we get locked inside? How do we get unlocked?
Yeah, a simple answer to that complicated question, because there are many angles from which we could talk about it. From a Jungian perspective, is we get locked into patterns of behavior, which include patterns of thinking, because there are feedback loops, or what Jung called complexes, that form automatically in the unconscious in response to unmetabolized, unexperienced, unintegrated experiences that have a very strong affective or emotional core. That was a big sentence. I'm aware
Yes,
of
could you
what I
please
just
say
said.
that again?
Uh,
Okay, there was metabolism in there. So here's I'll try to recreate it. So there was something about things come in, they're overwhelming for us, and they don't get metabolized, and then and I'm not sure exactly what even metabolizing means, but I was thinking of a big turkey dinner, and you're just sitting there, and then you zone out.
um, yeah. So for there's lots I could say, but for purposes of the access point, is when you're caught in a complex or feedback loop, you are caught in an unconscious pattern of response that is tied to your own history. And when you're in that unconscious pattern of response, there is a strong, overwhelming affect and emotion with strong body innervation that keeps you locked in a room with tunnel vision. You don't see a way out. All that exists in that moment inside of you, that on a feeling level, on a physiological level, and in your mind's eye in that moment, is that overwhelming affect and whatever it's tied to. And so you're locked in to a complex. Typically, when we're caught in our complexes, which happen probably to all of us all day, every day in some form or fashion, hopefully we get out of it more quickly the more conscious we are. But when we get caught in a complex, we can't think. We cannot think. We can't see our way out. Our body is reacting. We truly don't have access to the rest of us. So just like when our front door got the lock this week decided to fail completely. It has been going downhill now for several months, but it decided to fail completely, and it decided to completely fail in locked position, which meant we couldn't get out the door. Now, fortunately, we do have two other doors. However, this was the front door.
Well, I want to stop you right there. You said something. You're saying it decided. Now, I know that you're joking. I know that you're
Yes.
but but what's the truth in terms of us? Because we lock down as well in that locked position, and the access is no longer available. And we don't decide to do that. What actually happens?
Well, it's an unconscious defense mechanism, is what it is.
Okay.
So, our psyche is composed of what we might call the primitive, unconscious, non rational psyche that comes out of the objective psyche, that which is larger than us. Then there is our personal subjective self, our sense of who we are that comes from ego self. The unconscious patterns I'm talking about, that decision's made by primitive psyche, and there are many factors that go into that. It's not a cognitive, rational, logical process like ego thinks about, but it is a primitive defense mechanism. First and
Yeah.
foremost, the life process in nature and the life essence in us wants us to survive and stay alive. And so, for us to survive and stay alive, sometimes growing up, what happens is the primitive psyche, the larger self, the unconscious, makes a choice that we shut off parts of ourselves because when we express them, we get shamed. We get annihilated. Any sense of self that's starting to bud, and so it's as if the self goes into hiding. And the psychoanalyst Winnicott talks about that. He talks about how there can be an isolate of the true self, which is a bit of our own true nature, that it goes into hiding. It's locked away from us and inaccessible. How do you access it? That's an individual answer for each person, and that's part of what we explore in analysis, is helping people find what it is that for in their psyche, that's the path forward and that which is needed to bear to bring the door open.
Okay. I have. First of all, did you say an islet, like a
An
small island?
isolate. An
Oh,
isolate.
so, something isolated.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, I would love to tell a quick story of something that actually happened this week that was a shutdown place that opened up for me. I was talking to a coach of mine, and I realized that there's an event that happened in my past when I was around 8 years old that created a sort of a sense of who I am that
Mhm.
I've not been able to break. And it was I lived in a housing project, and a little girl and I we got each a quarter or something like that, and we were gonna get to go to the corner store and have a soda or something. But we were gonna curl our hair, and I knew nothing about. We were talking about hair. Okay, I knew nothing about hair. I mean, I grew up washing my hair with dishwashing liquid because my mom said, it's all soap. Like, what? There's no need. So I knew nothing about it, and I knew nothing about the fundamentals of how to curl somebody's hair. So she curled my hair
Mhm.
in these big curlers, and and all I knew how to do was to take her long straight hair, take one thin strand of it, and make a pin curl at the top of her head. And she was like, "Are you sure this is going to work?" And I was like, "This is going to be amazing. People are going to be amazed." And I had this vision that she was going to walk out and her hair was, this amazing, unicorn type thing on the top of her hair. So, an hour and a half later, we take the pin curls out and my hair looks absolutely luxurious. She's done this amazing thing for me and her hair looks ridiculous. And I got it in my head. I'm rinky dink. This is who I am. I'm always doing this. I don't know how to fundamentally, I just have this idea about myself. And so I was talking to the coach, and we went into it in a way again to talk about it. And for the first time, I was able to imagine what it was like for that little girl. Like, all I had was the shame that I made her look ridiculous. It had never occurred to me to think that she was proud of what she
Mhm.
had done for me, and that
Mhm.
I could actually enjoy that and appreciate it, and that I could learn, that I could ask her, "What did you do? How could I do it?" And
Mhm.
that became an access point, because this feeling of I'm rinky dink, everything I do is rinky dink and it's just going to be like this. Um,
Right.
it was a feeling. So you talked about an emotion a minute ago, and as you were talking about it, I had this feeling of like, oh, that's kind of the amorphous glue that holds all these parts together. And so all my
Abs-
life I had this feeling, and
yeah.
now it kind of broke apart, and there seems to be an access point there. Before, the door was locked shut with shame, which
Right.
was which was like glue with hair in it and stuff, and now something has opened up.
Yeah, absolutely. Shame is truly unmitigated, unbalanced, toxic shame truly locks us into these kinds of places of low self-worth, of feeling as if we can't, of shutting down, of depression because we don't allow ourselves to move. So you're absolutely right. One of the things that you're sharing about what your coach helped you get to is you were caught in a one-sidedness of the experience, which is the shame you felt at how you had pinned her hair up. What was also, though, a part of the experience was your friend's sense of pride and success at, well, look how her hair looks. And so you were caught, and this is part of every complex, in one-sidedness. And so
Mm.
part of what mitigates shame and what does unlock whatever the lock is for those parts of ourselves is when we can see the whole, when we can hold both sides of what was going on in the moment, not just one side. But again, we get caught, and it's a primitive defense. It's not that any of us consciously decide we're going to go through life feeling like we're rinky dink and we can't do anything worthwhile. We don't cognitively choose that. Now, over time as adults, we may reinforce it because we bought into the idea or belief that that feeling generated. But in the beginning, its origin is not something that's a cognitive choice. It's an
You know,
unconscious defense.
as you're talking, I keep going back to the Golden Cage, this musical that just came out this year, but that I've been writing literally my whole life, and it's been a repeating. All the themes are repeating, and it's all about a cage that's irresistible from the outside and inescapable from the inside, and it literally looks different from either side. It looks and it acts and it functions differently from either side. And what I'm hearing and what you're saying, I got very struck by, I was on one side of this memory, and
Mm-hmm.
and yet there is another side, and probably many, 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 many sides of it.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
for all I know, her mother was happy because instead of fighting, having a war with newspapers, in fact, we were doing something that was, I
Right.
don't know all the different sides of it. I don't know, and I've been so caught, and I'm sure, yeah, so caught in that one theme.
Yeah, so it's just like if we go back to my locked front door for a minute.
Yes.
There were two other doors we could go out of the house. This is the reality of our psyche. There's always more than one door. However, in the complex, We're caught just thinking this is the only way out. This is the only ingress and egress. Yet it takes something from a different direction, a different door to help us get out. Your coach provided something from a different door. She could see the big picture and invite you to see it. That's what you do in the academy all the time when you offer snippets or you offer principles is you say, okay, here's another way. Instead of trying to plow through where you feel locked and stuck in, come this way and see what happens.
You, that's interesting, because as you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, but then you only have two doors and you always have to go out the back door. So you do want to have as much access. But we were also talking earlier about how we each do this in our academy, what we're providing, and there is this breakdown to fundamentals. Like I'm thinking, your door has this very complicated lock. It's some kind of, right? Right. So there's actually, it's so complicated that there is literally no way to fix it. And therefore and it fits with the door so perfectly that you literally have to get a new door. And I see this in some of the people that I work with, because I'm working with harpists who are some of them, and we're working on improv, and it's all about self-expression, not any specific expression,
Mm-hmm.
and people are at all different technical levels and levels of experience. So you really get to see people's engagement with the feeling that I can or can't do this at many different levels. And you start to see what's fundamental, or, kind of the things that everyone deals with. And it has nothing to do with your level of skill. People who are just starting or thinking, I need to get better, I don't have enough skills. People who've been doing it for years are like, I'm stuck in my skill, but everyone's still stuck.
Yeah.
And so the access point, I'm discovering, one of the things I started doing was giving snippets. In other words, little tiny bits of stuff I've been playing with my whole life, little musical things, like even like, that's it. That's the whole snippet. It's called a descending bass line, and this is what it does. It just goes down like that. But you can start improvising above it. It creates this little structure, but it's such a tiny structure that it's really easy to play with. And it's unlike Lincoln Logs or Legos or whatever, where you're supposed to put them together a certain way. It's a fundamental, you just learn it, and then it opens and it opens and it opens and it opens at any level of
Mm-hmm.
ability. But what I notice where people get stuck is they're like, okay, I can do it. Okay, now I can do it. And that's not the point. The point is that it allows you to have a practice that gets to you. So you do this, then you do it, then you do it, and maybe you only do part of it. You do it with something else, see what happens. You
Mm-hmm.
do it up here. It's an idea. It's not a thing to master. It's a thing
Mm-hmm.
to it's an activity that lets you discover your own mastery. And then what I find is that people get stuck if they're stuck in like, well, do I have this right or do I have this wrong? It's not it.
Right.
It's like it's a thing to play with. And then they get stuck in, well, what can I do with it? And then they often get stuck in, I have it.
Mhm.
Whereas in fact, it is a thing. Like, I have never gotten over this. I've been fascinated by this since I was a little kid, and it keeps
Mhm.
opening up more and more. I can put it in a different place, and it
Mhm.
opens up a whole new feeling. Like, it's an idea. It's an access point. It's a relationship between notes that creates an access point. So I
Yeah.
discovered that the things that are working for people are these snippets that I teach, and then concepts like the idea of there being, like what I teach in the creative resonance or strings of passion, the idea of impulse, structure, character, roles, breaking things down. What am I talking about? I mean, I
Well,
know what I'm talking about.
yeah, I'll tell you what I'm hearing and what's coming to my mind is you're talking about how practices can be an access point. And so that the idea you give of the snippet and that ability to just be with it and listen over and over and follow your own impulse for expression with it, that practice becomes an access point. And in the online embodiment circle, which you can access at onlinesacredcircles.com,
Mhm.
that the embodiment practices are access points to one's own true self, because the access point that we need to live who we truly are and to not get caught in our own cages of conditioned feedback loops or complexes is we need to be able to know what's going on inside of us more fully, learning to listen to our own body, listen to our muscles, listen to our breath, being present with ourselves. So the practices become access points. And we need those kinds of, they're like locksmiths. We had to call a locksmith to come out and get this door lock off. And that was an adventure in and of itself. So, um, in a way, the practices are like the tools of the locksmith. And
Mhm.
from a psychological archetypal point of view, from archetypal psychology, that the locksmith is an inner archetypal character, that or energy that does the work, but we provide the tools. We provide the tools with our practices. And ultimately, the inner locksmith is an aspect of the larger self, or what in the 12 steps they talk about as the power greater than the ego self. So we are giving the tools for the locksmith. I would say the snippets and the other practices, the ideas or whatever you offer in the academy, become practices or tools we use to build muscles. So we hear the inner archetypal musician and we hear the music. Part of what I always love when you demonstrate, just like you did earlier, is it's so clear to me you go into a little bit different state of consciousness. That you're listening to the note of the harps, but you're also listening deeply to what's coming up, and then you find it on the harp and play it. And you have a lot of experience and skill and technique and a lot of things to be able to do that. But I think what you're saying to people over and over again that matters, and I would agree if we want to live out of our true self, is that what matters is that we listen. We listen to the one note, and we listen and we keep listening until we hear something, and then we follow that. And then we keep listening, and when we hear something different, we change up what we're following, but we keep listening deeply to that power greater than the self, whether it's the inner archetypal harpist, singer, um, whatever.
I got from what you were saying too, the listening. And I will say that this is a practice that I teach, especially in creative resonance, the class that's coming up
Mhm.
in January, is to be able to play and listen. And as you were talking, I was realizing that it, if you are listening to playing the right or the wrong note, you're going to get stuck. But
Mhm.
I was thinking that a beautiful practice is, this is right, and this is right, and this is right. And that
Mm.
little little thing that just happened when my finger kind of went back on. That is right. Because and I do not have perfect pitch. I cannot always play what I hear,
Mhm.
um, but I can play the emotion by having since a kid found these things that sounded like music.
Right. Right.
Then it allows me to find something and to repeat it, and also to know that there is a simple principle that you can change one thing and leave the others the same, and you get a completely different context. Like this means one thing, it's a different harmony as I shift to
Mhm.
what's underneath it. And so what I don't know if I can express this, but what I was getting listening to you talking, and you said I'm listening to what I'm doing and shifting, and I thought, well, I don't actually know the notes, but I know the
Mhm.
feeling of it. And I
Yeah.
thought a beautiful practice would be, this is right, and 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 this is right. Just literally for everything that I do to get in the practice, there is no wrong here. Now, it's easy to say, like, well, what about when you step on the cat's tail? Is that wrong? I don't know. But I mean, that's not the problem isn't that I don't react if I do something that needs to have some kind of amends created, or the problem is that I'm stuck by thinking constantly that I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah. I mean, when we get into psychic, this, psyche and Jung's theory about psyche and psychic energy, what I always say to people is psyche in and of itself, psychic energy in and of itself is neutral. So the energy that you were moving through the house when you stepped on the cat's tail is not right nor wrong. It's just energy. Now, the expression of that energy might have been wrong in the sense that it
Mm.
hurts someone, but when it comes to the to judgment about right and wrong, that's a moral issue. It's not a psychic issue. Psychic energy just is. And what we know in nature is every energy has its place. The same thing in metabolism in the body. When we eat food, there's the processes of catabolism that tear things down and anabolism that builds things up. I may have gotten those two backwards, but anyway, the whole point being that, everything, creation, equilibrium, and destruction, have a rightful place in the cycle of life. And so part of what we have to do psychologically, is we have to begin to get into conscious relationship with those three currents of energy. If we want to, I'm oversimplifying for a minute, but the creative energies, the energies of equilibrium or balance, and the energies of destruction, so that we can then begin to use them in service of life instead of them kicking in according to unconscious patterns based on our history, where when we're needing to build something up, we're destroying instead. Or when we need to be destroying something,
Mm.
i.e., changing out the broken down door and lock, we're trying to build up something that needs to go.
Now,
So,
is it really destruction, or is it deconstruction? Is it like,
well, we could use whatever word you wanted. I
okay,
mean, when you
okay,
deconstruct things, there is a destruction to the form it
okay,
was.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, okay, great. And so what I'm hearing from you is that I I, I love this, there's there's structure,
Mm-hmm.
construction, there's destruction or deconstruction, and there's balance, and that there's this beauty between them. That's being alive. That they're all moving. And as you were talking, I was also thinking, this is right and this is right. No, no, no. This is beautiful, and this is beautiful, and this is beautiful. To be
Yeah.
able to and not even, and maybe even to say this is, and then this is. I'm not even sure
Yeah.
what to say in my head, but to be able to listen, and also to be able to listen to more than myself, and
Right.
think, this is an access point to
Right.
sound. This is an access point.
Yes.
and just opening and opening and opening and becoming aware of it through and anything we do. I'm getting excited right now because I'm realizing it is a non-critical way to be
Yes.
able to approach and engage with an
Right.
instrument, to simply become aware this is an access point. These are all the access points. And then, so each note or each whatever is an access point, and then each two notes together is a new
Hmm.
kind of access point. And then each that's not even a progression, it's sort of like I call it a snippet. Each of those is an access point. And then
Right.
as we move those around, the progression becomes another access point. And then how I'm performing it or how I'm enjoying it, and then the rhythm, which comes back to an answer that I had as a kid. How come they haven't written all the music yet? There's only 12 notes, and I only really play 7 of them at any one time. And it's making me realize why it is infinite, why any art
Yeah.
form is infinite.
Right.
And I think, okay, beautiful. I'm just going to put this up. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, okay, we just got a comment, and thank you. We love when you all
Yeah.
comment. I love that. I like that thought. Balance between construction and destruction. Don't put energy into building up something that should be destructed, and the other way around. And then the balance, and
Right.
being okay with those and playing with them.
Yeah, and we're doing today's Jung at Harp on the 22nd of December. So we just celebrated the solstice yesterday, the longest night of the year. I was going to say the day, but the longest night. So it's again those opposites of recognizing the darkness and the light. And part of what I always say to people, ultimately, um, the process of individuation and the process of working as a Jungian analyst is getting comfortable always being in relationship to the darkness, to the mystery, to what is yet just becoming known. And that's part of what I love about our conversations as we come together with a comfort level of, okay, we're going to jump in there with each other and with those of you who join in to see what in the unknown and the darkness wants to be made known. And there's so many little sparks of light in that. So each of those notes is like a little spark of light that is seemingly in the dark but surrounded by so much more. And that's true for our own nature too.
Yeah, I love you said something and I was like, "Oh my God, this is what this is all about." Um, yes, it was the word individuation.
Hmm.
And it was what I know that you're working as in your life, in our
Hmm.
conversations, in your sacred circle, in the academy where I'm teaching, is the individuation, taking art, taking life, and then creating all the access points so that each individual can be fully self-expressed
Right.
as who they are. And as I'm saying this aloud, I'm realizing that what that provides for the world is so much more richness. Like when you said all those
Yeah.
lights, I realized that each one of them will have a slightly different color, a slightly different vibration or pulsation. And that's what creates, as we let that light, as we allow the access to that light in ourselves and others, not only does it light for others, but we can begin to see that we are not alone
Right. That's
in
right.
those lights.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And who doesn't love more light in the night sky? I mean, I'm just having two memories. One is of being on the east coast of North Carolina where there was just no ambient light, no light pollution. And we went out and looked under the stars, and oh my God, the sky was just filled with millions and millions of stars. We could even see the Milky Way galaxy. And where I live now, there's become so much light pollution that we don't see a lot. But one morning last week, I was wandering around outside about 4:30 a.m. to see if I could see the Geminids asteroid shower. And I was really struck with after I'd been outside about 20 minutes, how many more stars I could see. My eyes adjusted to the darkness. And that ability for our inner senses to get on board and adjust to the darkness is something we have to allow time and space for. And this again comes back to the embodiment practices in my online sacred circle, but it also what you talk about in the academy as practices. You just do this
Mhm,
practice, you do this
mhm,
practice. In a way, it's equivalent to being in the darkness, only seeing a few stars or planets. And then 20, 30 minutes later, it's like, oh my God, look how many more. They really are still here. Even where I live, they're still here and I can see them. But taking time for our eyes to adjust. I mean, that's
yeah,
an access point. The eyes are an access point. Now we're going to have to stop, but
I
we're into
know.
something totally different.
Well, I do want to bring it back because you said this earlier on, and what I heard in what you said, and it was really beautiful, is that the darkness itself becomes an access point to light.
Yeah.
What a beautiful way to head into this week.
Yeah.
Kathleen, thank you so much. I just love coming up with an idea, sharing it with you, and seeing where it goes, and love
Mhm.
it even more when those of you comment. And thank you so much for the comment today and the comments that we get afterwards. I really love hearing what do you take away from this, because when you share that, I see it in a whole new way through Kathleen and our conversation with Kathleen, and then also through the post conversations with you. So thank you, Kathleen. Thank you to
Mhm.
everybody who watched this with us and also afterwards. And look forward to seeing you again next week on Jung